All right, I'm going to push the button. You ready? Hi, welcome back. So in this week's video, I'm going to be trying to fix the boot separator in my Mercedes E-Class, also known as a trunk divider. Obviously, you only get it on the convertible because of the purpose of it is to prevent things jamming when you put the roof down, you know, luggage and things like that you've got in the boot. Okay, so let's get straight in there and have a look and see what the problem is. Okay, so let's get the boot open on this car and I can show you what the issue is. And I'll tell you what, let's get all this junk out as well. Okay, so just quickly for people who aren't as familiar with the system, there's a button here, and when you press it, then a trunk divider comes down inside the boot. And the purpose of the boot divider is it's something that comes down from the top, and it makes sure that you're leaving enough space in the boot if you decide to put your convertible roof down, so your luggage sits underneath it, and then the car knows if you then want to do some open top cruising, there's enough room for the roof to come in. And as I mentioned, mine's playing up, so let's have a look at that. So when I push the button on mine, you'll notice the divider starts to come down, but it never comes to the fully down position, and then it starts to make an awful ratcheting noise. So I think you'll agree that didn't sound good. And as you saw, if I help it with my hand and it reaches its final position, then it stops, so it must have a limit switch or something. And it sounds like a gear is jumping, or maybe some teeth are missing on the gear. So let's have a closer look at that. Usually it folds up okay, so I'll show you that too. Yeah, so as you can see, it goes back up again okay. And that gives me a bit of hope that it can be fixed. So I couldn't find any videos or instructions for this, so I'm kind of winging it at the moment. But it looks like there's just 2 screws that hold this bit up. You know, I might find there's more to do. But hopefully if I take these 2 screws out, then I'll be able to look inside and see what's going on. So these 2 bolts just need an E11 socket, so I'm just undoing both of those, and then hopefully the boot partition divider will drop down and I'll be able to see a little bit more. Okay, so it hasn't just dropped down. So the brackets at the top just hooked on, but it wasn't immediately apparent, but wiggling it did the trick. Oh yeah, there we go. And I think the mechanism that powers all this is all self-contained in here, because I can see an electrical connection over here, or at least an electrical wire anyway. So I'm wondering what it does now. Now it's dropped down if I push the button. Probably shouldn't do this, but let's see. Okay. Didn't sound happy, did it? So what's clear is that you can replace this whole thing as a unit. In fact, there's even a part number over here. So I'll leave that part number there in case it helps someone. So I'm just going to pop to the computer with that part number and see if I can find one for sale and how much it costs. Okay, so I've just had a look on eBay. There's about 10 available, half of them in Lithuania. I don't know why always Lithuania. And then a few available in the UK, and the cheapest one is 170 quid. So goodness knows how much they are new from Mercedes-Benz. Oh, and by the way, the official name for these is a Mercedes partition roller blind. So that sounds a lot better than boot divider, which is what I was calling them. But anyway, obviously there's different part numbers from the E-Class and the C-Class because they're different size cars. And I'll put those part numbers in the video description just in case it helps you out. But what I've learned is, yes, it is worth trying to fix this. So I'm going to be delving in there to see what else is required to remove this from the car so I can work on it on the bench. Okay, so I was a bit worried it might come to this, but this side trim here needs to come out in order to get to some screws at the back on the bracket. And it's a similar picture over at the other side too. So again, this needs to come out. See if I can get to those screws at the back. I'm going to start by getting all the tools out, the boot floor out. Maybe this seal that's at the front, maybe this as well, so we'll see. Probably take out more than I need to, but I'll try not to. Okay, so the first thing is the electrical connector, and behind this trim here, and if I get a bit of light on it, you can just see the electrical connector in there. So I'm just going to reach in and disconnect that. Actually, what I'm going to do to make it a bit easier is take this little plastic bracket off, and the electrical connector's on there. And that's just a little connector that holds that into the bracket. There we go, finally. Okay, so that's that bit done. So I might seem like I'm going overboard, but this is the same piece of trim that runs all the way to the back. And so that boot floor was over it, and this thing goes over it, and basically everything is holding this side trim in place. I've actually had this piece of trim out before, and this rubber seal just goes over the edge of it, and it just pulls off, if I remember right. It's quite firm, you know, to get it off. Well, there we go. Normally there'd be some screws here, but my car's never had them for whatever reason. And these side trims have switches and lights and all sorts in them, so you always have lots of electrical connectors to undo. Okay, so it's looking like quite a mess now, but things have got to get worse before they get better. But these are the two screws that I was looking at before that were behind the trim. I'll have to check on the other side, because if I can just get to those screws without removing all this trim, then I will do. So it was a bit of a long reach all the way into the back of the boot, but with a bit of perseverance I got it done. In hindsight, I probably could have used a powered driver, but I got there. And what I can see now that it's loose is that this gear will just come out of this bracket at this side. Obviously I need to make sure it's in the correct position on both sides when I put it back together. But I should be able to pull all this out now without disassembling anything else. Actually, there's just a silly little Velcro cover at this side, but it's just held on by this string. So I can just pop that off. And now hopefully the whole thing will lift out. Okay, so now that we've got the Mercedes boot partition, or roller blind divider, or whatever you want to call it, on the bench, or in this case on the kitchen surface, there's 23 T20 screws to take out. So I'm going to whiz all those out, and then we'll see if we can repair it. It's worth a try, isn't it? See if this lifts off. That's thinking about it, isn't it? So I'm a little disappointed because I was hoping just to see something really obviously damaged, but I can't really see anything, and the only thing I can see that has a gear on it, which might have been clunking, like stripped or whatever, is that one. It looks alright what I can see of it at the moment, but of course there may be some more teeth underneath, and maybe they're damaged, who knows. I'll have to see if I think that there's anything else I can do with this. So clearly there's an electric motor in here which drives the mechanism somehow, and I'm a bit wary about it because this is a big spring, so I don't want to loosen that, lose the tension off the spring, or the spring fly out or whatever. But you can see this wire that's coming across the top, and then there's another one here, has a sleeve on it, but there's like a yellow and a brown wire, and they're all going into this really. So that means the electric motor's under this cover, and so if there is a gear that's stripped or jumped out of position, it might be under this cover. So I think I'm going to have to take these out now. Now there's actually 3 screws across the back. This one's really loose, and I haven't done anything with it yet, so I'm not sure why. Or whether that's even contributing to the problem, who knows. Now whether that'll move position, it'll slide or turn round, who knows. Oh, it will move. Ah, yeah. Again, I don't know if I'm going to see anything here, but we've got more of a chance if we turn it around where we can actually look. So this is the motor here, and you can see the gear wheels here. And I can't see a problem with them at the moment. Oh, it seems like this will... Oh, it's broken. Oh, what a mare. Okay, I'll show you exactly what's broken. So this bit here should be all one complete piece, and you can see it's come off. So I'm going to try some plastic adhesive. So you have an activator that you spray onto the parts that you're going to join first, and then you have to wait for it to flash off for a while, and then you have a glue, it's almost like a super glue really, that you apply to the edges, and then just press and hold it together for 20 seconds, and let's see if it does the job. Okay, yeah, so here's the bit that we've glued up. Of course there was this top beam here, but then there were some further down below as well, which we also got glue on. And you'll see it looks a little bit untidy here, big blob of glue. A friend of mine informed me that that goes absolutely rock hard, and actually it'll just give extra support to that area, so it was intentional that. Okay, so now I'm just going to whiz those 3 screws back in. So I just need to get this cover back on. I think it's one of those covers that keeps springing back until you get some screws in, so I'm just going to start popping some in really here and there. Okay, let's get it out there and get it installed. Okay, so I expect this install to be a bit tricky. So the reason why I expect it to be a bit tricky is at this end the roller blind goes into these teeth, and I suspect when the roller blind goes down at the front, then the back part goes down these teeth, so that then it's nice and level across. And so the tricky bit is knowing how far the back of this roller blind needs to be, because this is pretty long. When I install it, the front bit will be fully down, and so the rollers need to be at the bottom of the track. So that's what I'm going to try to do, and I'm actually going to get the rollers at the back in first. So the back of here is like a square channel, and I can show you on the roller blind, this is square at the back as well. So it seems to me that this square section runs up and down the channel, so it gets installed something like this. That goes in at the bottom, if I can make it do it, and I think right at the bottom of the track. Okay, so this is just my first effort. I fully expect to have to do this again. But on the right hand side you can see that the cog is in the very bottom of the track. And so then if we follow that across to the left hand side, then I've reinstalled this plastic bracket here, and as you can see the cog at the other end goes into the bottom there. So this is in the down position for the roller blind at the moment, which is how I think that the front goes on when it bolts in. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so what we think happens here is this is down at the moment. Yeah, okay, so that's not working straight away. Because at the back the roller blinds, as I try to pull this forward to get it on where it needs to be, the roller blinds are at the bottom of those tracks already, so it won't allow me to pull this forward, so that's clearly not in the right position. And I think in hindsight I might be better putting this front part on first and then the back part afterwards, because otherwise I have no idea if the length's correct. So I'm going to undo it at the back again, and then we're going to try again. Okay, I've got it loose at the back, so now I'm going to see if I can get the front on first. There's a little slot at the back, and this part goes into it. So I'm going to have another go with this roller now, and of course access is going to be even more awkward now. Yeah, and I'm going to jump in this way. Just to try it, just to see if I get better access and can see what I'm doing back here. So I'll put you guys there. Hopefully you're seeing something. Now I want this roller blind thing tight, so I'm pulling it tight, and then I think that's about right. So it needs to be right at the bottom. Okay. Now that actually looks like it's slanting down, so it looks lower at this end than it is at the other. So I'm not sure what to do. It makes sense for me to kind of put it a bit further. But if I do that and I'm wrong and this reaches the top of the track, but then I might have to do it again. So that's where it's going for now. And then I've got this bracket and the screwdriver, and we're going to spin round and see if we can get the other side done. Because of course this side's the easy one because the bracket's already mounted. Something like that, I think. So here I'm screwing in the screw at the very top of the bracket. Well, I'm just showing you as best I can, but you can see hopefully that the top screws in, and at the same time I needed to make sure that the cog was at the bottom of the track at that side, and now I've just got the screw to put on the bottom screw. I'll tell you what, that bottom screw is so awkward to get to that I'll do it once this is retracted up, if it works properly. So I need to plug it in in order to get this roller to go up as the blind goes up at the front. So I'm just going to plug this in here because I know that it mounts on the back of this somehow and that bolts up somehow. But if this doesn't all work, then I'll be taking it all back out again anyway, so might as well give that a go. Hi guys, it's been a real mission, but I've got this piece assembled now. And so now when I push the button, which is right up here, then that retracts and the roller goes up at the back, if you noticed, and then the opposite. It turns out that my boot partition actually had two problems, both of them linked to a little limit switch that tells the car when this is moved down to the fully vertical position. So let's have a quick look at that and I'll explain exactly what I mean. Okay, so the first thing was, because my trunk partition was broken inside, you remember I glued it, this never came to the fully vertical position. It was always kind of like a little bit inwards at an angle. And what that meant was the little sensor that's just behind here never saw this in the correct position. But if you look at the sensor, there's one there and it looks across, and this should block it when it's in the right position. And if we look across here, then it goes to here. And as a result, it just kept driving the motor, trying to get it into this position, which, as you heard, causes the clutch to clack because the motor's just driving and driving, and eventually it times out and stops. And so after I repaired the unit inside by gluing it and reassembled it, I'd actually resolved that problem. But when I tested it, it was still clacking and you could hear the clutch slipping again. But that's because I had a different problem, so let's have a look at that. So because I'd had this trim out, I hadn't got it back in quite as tidy as it needed to be, and it was actually a little piece of the trim that was blocking the hole, and again that was confusing the system, and it was continuing to drive the motor and causing a very similar symptoms to when this was broken inside. And the other thing to mention was this blind underneath, once it was installed, was a little bit baggy and hanging down. And what I found I had to do a couple of times was drop the roller out at the back, and then the little tab that goes into the slot, you can actually wind tension onto the roller. So I had to do that, reinstall it. And that helps hold a little bit more tension onto this blind, which you can see. Okay, so it turned out to be a much more complicated job than I thought it was going to be. But if you've got a Mercedes E-Class or a Mercedes C-Class convertible and you have this type of electric roller boot partition, then hopefully this video will help you a little bit trying to fix it. And even if you don't have one of these cars, then maybe you enjoyed the process and seeing what's going on with this job. If I was doing this job again, then the first thing I would check is that sensor, just to make sure some of the trim's not obscuring it before I tried pulling it out of the car and working on it on the bench. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then please give me a thumbs up. And no doubt next week I'll be fixing something else on this car or one of my other ones. So if you're interested in car DIY or just seeing stuff being fixed, then please consider subscribing, and maybe I'll see you in the next video. Okay, thanks for watching. Catch you next time.